They mocked her in the saloon. Then a cowboy declared, "She's my future wife." The bottle shattered against the wall inches from her head. Claire Murphy didn't flinch. She kept her green eyes locked on the three ranch hands blocking the saloon entrance, their laughter cutting through the piano music like broken glass. Her worn dress was covered in trail dust, her dark hair tangled from 2 days of hard riding, but she stood straight as a lodgepole pine. "Look at this one, boys," the tallest man sneered, tobacco juice staining his beard. "Thinks she can waltz into Red Creek and drink with the men." The bartender, a heavy-set man named Dutch, wiped the same glass he'd been cleaning for 5 minutes. His eyes darted between Claire and the troublemakers. Every patron in the Silver Dollar Saloon had gone quiet, watching. "I'm here for information, not trouble," Claire said, her voice steady despite the racing of her heart. "I'm looking for a man named Cole Bennett." "Anyone here know him?" The bearded man took a step closer. His breath reeked of whiskey. "Maybe we know him, maybe we don't. What's a woman want with Bennett anyway? You his whore?" The slap of boot heels on wood planks cut through the tension. A man emerged from the shadows near the back table, his spurs chiming with each deliberate step. He was tall and lean, wearing a black hat pulled low over his eyes.
A Colt revolver hung at his hip, the leather holster worn smooth from use. "That's enough, Wade," the stranger said quietly.
Wade spun around, his hand moving toward his gun. "This ain't your business, Hayes. I'm making it my business." The stranger stopped 6 feet away, his stance relaxed but ready. "The lady asked a civil question. She deserves a civil answer." "Lady?" Wade laughed, and his two companions joined in. "This saddle tramp ain't no lady. Look at her. Probably rode in from some mining camp brothel." The stranger's jaw tightened. In one fluid motion, he closed the distance between them and drove his fist into Wade's gut. The big man doubled over, gasping. Before his friends could react, the stranger had his revolver drawn and pointed at them. "Anyone else want to discuss manners?" he asked. The two men grabbed Wade by his arms and dragged him toward the door. Wade coughed and spat, glaring at the stranger. "You'll regret this, Hayes. Nobody crosses the Dunmore crew and lives to tell about it." "I'm shaking," Hayes said flatly. The doors swung shut behind them. The piano player started up again, and conversations resumed as if nothing had happened. Claire realized she'd been holding her breath. She let it out slowly. Hayes holstered his weapon and turned to her. For the first time, she saw his face clearly. He had sharp features, weathered by sun and wind, with gray eyes that seemed to see right through her. A scar ran along his left cheekbone. "Thank you," Claire said. "I didn't need help, but I appreciate it anyway." "Didn't look like you needed it," Hayes agreed. "You didn't flinch when that bottle came at your head. That takes nerve." He studied her for a moment. "Cole Bennett, you said? You know him?" "Might. What's he to you?" Trust didn't come easy, especially not to strangers in saloons. But something about this man's direct gaze made her want to answer honestly. "He killed my father," she said simply. "Shot him in the back in Tucson 3 months ago. I've been tracking him ever since." Hayes nodded slowly, as if this made perfect sense. "Bennett's dangerous. Fast with a gun and mean as a rattlesnake. You planning to kill him yourself? I'm planning to see justice done. Justice and revenge aren't always the same thing." "Maybe not," Claire said. "But they'll look the same when I find him." Hayes walked to the bar and ordered 2 whiskeys. He slid one across to Claire. She picked it up and downed it in one swallow, feeling the burn all the way to her stomach. "Bennett rode through here 2 days ago," Hayes said. "Headed north toward the Blackwater Canyon. He's meeting someone there, some kind of deal going down. Don't know what, don't care. But if you're going after him, you're going to need more than courage. I can handle myself. Against Wade and his friends, maybe? Against Bennett and whoever he's meeting with?" Hayes shook his head. "That's suicide." Claire set the glass down hard on the bar. "Then I'll die trying. My father deserves that much." Hayes was quiet for a long moment, studying his whiskey. Finally, he looked up at her. Dutch had moved down the bar, giving them privacy. The other patrons were absorbed in their own conversations. "She's my future wife," Hayes said suddenly, loud enough for half the saloon to hear. Claire's eyes went wide. Conversation stopped again. Even the piano player hit a wrong note. Every eye in the Silver Dollar turned toward them. "What did you just say?" Claire whispered, her voice tight. Hayes didn't look at her. He kept his gaze fixed on Dutch and the other men at the bar. "You heard me. Any man who insults her insults me. Anyone who touches her answers to me. That includes Wade Dunmore and his whole damn crew." "Are you insane?" Claire hissed. "You don't even know my name." Claire Murphy, Hayes said. From Tucson. Your father was Patrick Murphy, a federal marshal. Bennett shot him during a bank robbery and escaped on a stolen horse. You've been following his trail through Arizona and New Mexico for 3 months, sleeping rough and taking odd jobs to keep moving. You're down to your last $5 and half a box of ammunition. How am I doing? Claire felt like she'd been punched in the chest. How do you know all that? Because I've been following the same trail, Hayes said. He finally looked at her, and his gray eyes were hard as flint. Cole Bennett killed my brother 2 years ago in Santa Fe. Shot him over a card game. I've been hunting Bennett ever since, but he's slippery. Always one step ahead. Then I heard about a woman asking questions in every town between here and Tucson, describing the same man I was after. So I started following you instead, figuring you'd lead me to him eventually. You've been following me? Anger flared in Claire's chest, hot and bright. For about a week now. You're good at tracking, I'll give you that. Better than most men I know. But you're not careful enough. You ask too many questions, trust too many strangers. Bennett's got friends everywhere. By now he knows someone's on his trail. That's why he's heading to Blackwater Canyon. It's remote, defensible, good place for an ambush. Claire's hand moved toward the small revolver hidden in her belt. Hayes noticed but didn't react. I'm not your enemy, he said quietly. And I'm not trying to steal your revenge. I'm trying to keep you alive long enough to get both of ours. Bennett's smart and he's got resources. You ride into Blackwater alone, you're dead. We ride in together, we might both walk out. And the wife declaration? What was that about? Hayes allowed himself a small smile. Protection. Wade Dunmore's crew owns half this town. By tomorrow morning, every man in Red Creek will know you're under my protection. They won't dare touch you. And when we ride out, they'll think twice about following or sending word to Bennett about a lone woman tracker. You could have just said I was traveling with you. Men respect marriage more than partnership, and they fear breaking it more than breaking a promise between strangers. Hayes finished his whiskey. Besides, Bennett will hear about it too. He'll be so focused on figuring out who I am and why I'm involved that he might get careless, might make a mistake. Claire wanted to argue, but the logic was sound. She hated that it was sound. But this is just an arrangement, nothing more. Once Bennett's dead, we go our separate ways. Agreed. Dutch came back down the bar, refilling their glasses without being asked. So you two are really getting married? He asked, his bushy eyebrows raised. As soon as the circuit preacher comes through next month, Hayes said smoothly, assuming we survive the honeymoon. Dutch laughed and moved away. Claire downed her second whiskey, then another. The alcohol was starting to warm her from the inside, loosening the knot of tension in her shoulders. We leave at dawn, Hayes said. Meet me at the livery stable. Bring only what you can carry on horseback. We'll be moving fast and we can't afford extra weight. I know how to travel light. I'm sure you do. Hayes tipped his hat to her. Get some rest, Claire Murphy. Tomorrow's going to be a long day. He walked out of the saloon, his spurs chiming with each step. Claire stood at the bar alone, trying to process what had just happened. In the space of 20 minutes, she'd been insulted, defended by a stranger, and declared someone's future wife. And that stranger had been following her for a week without her noticing. Dutch slid another whiskey across to her. This one's on the house. You look like you need it. Thanks. Claire picked up the glass but didn't drink. What do you know about Hayes? Showed up in Red Creek about 2 weeks ago. Keeps to himself mostly. Good with a gun, that's for sure. Saw him outdraw 3 men in the street last week. They were trying to rob the bank. He killed 2 and wounded the 3rd before the sheriff even got his boots on. He a lawman? Don't think so. Just a man who doesn't like bullies. Dutch leaned on the bar, his voice dropping low. Word of advice, miss. If Hayes is offering to help you with whatever trouble you're in, take it. There aren't many men in these parts who'll stand up to the Dunmore crew. Most end up face down in the dirt. The Dunmore crew. Wade's people? Wade's the youngest brother. There's 3 of them. Jack's the oldest and meanest. Runs a ranch about 10 miles north of here, but everyone knows it's just a front for rustling and worse. They've got maybe 20 men riding for them, all of them killers. If Wade tells his brothers about what happened tonight, they'll come looking for blood. Claire felt a chill despite the warm saloon air. Then maybe Hayes and I should leave tonight instead of waiting for dawn. But the Dunmore Ranch is between here and Blackwater Canyon. You'll have to pass right by it either way. Dutch straightened up and went back to wiping glasses. Just be careful, miss. This territory eats people alive. Claire left money on the bar and walked out into the night. Red Creek was a small town. just one main street with buildings clustered on either side. Oil lamps flickered in windows. Somewhere a dog barked. The desert air was cold and clean, tasting of sage and creosote. She found a boarding house and paid for a room with some of her precious remaining money. The bed was lumpy and the sheets were thin, but it was better than sleeping on the ground. She lay awake for hours, her father's face haunting her thoughts. Patrick Murphy had been a good man, honest and fair. He taught her to ride and shoot, to track and survive. He'd treated her like a son when the world insisted she be a lady, and Cole Bennett had shot him in the back like a coward. Claire touched the small silver locket around her neck, the one her father had given her on her 16th birthday. Inside was a photograph of him in his marshal's uniform, looking stern and proud. "I'm close, Papa," she whispered to the darkness. "I'm so close." "Just a little further and I'll make this right, I promise." Sleep finally came, restless and full of dreams about gunfire and blood. When she woke before dawn, she felt like she hadn't slept at all. She dressed quickly, checked her revolver, and gathered her few belongings into a worn saddlebag. The livery stable was at the edge of town. The sun was just starting to paint the eastern sky pink and gold. Hayes was already there, saddling a big roan gelding. His movements were efficient and practiced. He'd tied a second horse nearby, a sturdy bay mare. "That for me?" Claire asked. "Your horse threw a shoe yesterday. Saw it when I followed you into town. This one's sound and she's got stamina. You'll need it." Hayes finished with his saddle and turned to face her. In the early morning light, he looked harder somehow, more dangerous. "Ready?" "I was born ready." "Good answer." He swung up into his saddle with easy grace. "We'll ride northwest, circle around the Dunmore Ranch instead of going through their land. It'll add half a day to our journey, but it's safer. Once we reach the canyon rim, we'll need to scout before we go in. Bennett's expecting someone, which means he won't be alone." Claire mounted the bay mare. The horse was responsive and strong, better than the tired gelding she'd been riding. "What's the plan when we find him?" "We improvise." Hayes urged his horse forward. "I found that the best plans fall apart the moment bullets start flying anyway. Better to stay flexible." They rode out of Red Creek as the sun broke free of the horizon. Behind them, the town was starting to wake up. Smoke rose from chimneys. A rooster crowed. And somewhere in that collection of buildings, Wade Dunmore was probably plotting revenge. The trail led them through scrubland dotted with mesquite and prickly pear.
The morning air was crisp and clean, but Claire knew that by noon the sun would be merciless.
She kept pace with Hayes, watching how he sat his horse and scanned the terrain. He moved like a man who expected trouble around every bend. They'd been riding for maybe an hour when Hayes suddenly pulled up short. He held up a hand for silence. Claire reined in her mare and listened. At first she heard nothing but the wind rustling through the brush. Then she caught it. Hoofbeats. Multiple horses moving fast. "Into the rocks," Hayes said quietly, pointing toward a jumble of boulders 50 yards to their left. They urged their horses into a gallop, racing for cover. They had barely made it behind the rocks when 6 riders burst over the rise behind them. Even at a distance, Claire recognized Wade Dunmore's bulk in the lead. The riders pulled up where Hayes and Claire had been moments before, studying the ground. "They're tracking us," Claire whispered. "They're trying to." Hayes had drawn his rifle from its saddle scabbard. "But they're not very good at it. Wade's a brawler, not a tracker. Give him a few minutes and he'll give up, head back to town." But Wade didn't give up. He pointed toward the rocks and shouted something to his men. All 6 riders started moving toward their position, spreading out in a line. "Or not," Hayes muttered. He glanced at Claire. "Can you shoot? Better than I can sew." "Good. Because I'm about to start something that's going to be hard to finish." He stood up from behind the boulder, rifle raised. "That's far enough, Wade. Turn around and go home." The riders reined in about 40 yards out. Wade's face was purple with rage. "You made a big mistake, Hayes. Nobody humiliates me in my own town and rides away." "Huh, your town?" Hayes laughed. "Last I checked, Red Creek didn't belong to any man. You're just a bully with delusions of importance. And you're a dead man." Wade reached for his gun. Hayes fired first. The bullet kicked up dust 2 feet in front of Wade's horse, making the animal rear. Wade fought for control while his men scattered, reaching for their own weapons. Claire brought up her revolver and fired twice, both shots hitting the dirt near the horse's hooves. The animals panicked, bucking and spinning. "Next one's through your chest, Wade," Hayes called out. "You want to die over hurt pride?" One of Wade's men had steadied his horse and was bringing his rifle to bear. Claire aimed carefully and put a bullet through his hat. The man yelped and ducked, nearly falling from his saddle. His rifle went flying. "The lady's a better shot than you are, Wade," Hayes said. "Still want to do this?" Wade's horse had finally calmed enough for him to sit straight. His hand hovered over his gun, but he didn't draw. His eyes were locked on Hayes, burning with hatred. "This isn't over. It never is with men like you." Hayes kept his rifle trained on Wade's chest. "But today it is. Right away." For a long moment, nobody moved. Then Wade yanked his horse's head around and spurred it back the way they'd come. His men followed, 2 of them helping the one who'd lost his hat. They disappeared over the rise, the sound of hoofbeats fading into silence. Claire let out a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. That was too easy. It was. Hayes lowered his rifle but didn't put it away. Wade's not the type to back down from a fight, which means either he's scared of something or he's got a plan we don't know about. Maybe he's just a coward. Maybe. But cowards can be the most dangerous kind of men. They'll shoot you when your back is turned rather than face you straight on. Hayes climbed back into his saddle. "We need to move faster now. If Wade's not coming after us himself, he might be going to get reinforcements." They pushed their horses hard for the next 3 hours, putting miles between them and Red Creek. The terrain grew rougher, the trail winding through rocky canyons and dry creek beds. Hayes led them off the main path several times, following game trails and dry washes that would make them harder to track. By midday, they stopped to rest the horses and eat a cold meal of jerky and hardtack. Claire's body ached from the hard riding, but she didn't complain. Hayes seemed tireless, his attention constantly scanning the surrounding landscape. "Tell me about your brother," Claire said between bites of jerky. Hayes was quiet for so long she thought he wasn't going to answer. Finally, he said his name was Danny. He was 19 when Bennett killed him. Just a kid, really, full of big dreams and bad judgment. He thought he could beat Bennett at cards. He was wrong. "I'm sorry." Bennett accused Danny of cheating. Danny wasn't. He was just lucky that night, and Bennett couldn't stand losing. So Bennett shot him under the table where nobody could see it coming. By the time anyone realized what happened, Bennett was gone and Danny was bleeding out on the saloon floor. Hayes's voice was flat, emotionless, but his hands were white-knuckled on his reins. "I got there an hour later. Danny died in my arms." Claire felt a kinship with this hard-faced stranger. They'd both lost someone to the same monster. "We'll make him pay. Yes, we will." Hayes stood and began preparing his horse. "But payment isn't the same as healing. Killing Bennett won't bring Danny back. Won't bring your father back either. All it'll do is stop him from taking anyone else's family. That's enough for me." They mounted up and rode on. The afternoon sun was brutal, beating down on them without mercy. Claire drank sparingly from her canteen, knowing they'd need to find water soon. Hayes seemed to know where he was going, following landmarks that Claire couldn't quite identify. As the sun began its descent toward the western horizon, Hayes suddenly pulled up and pointed. There. Blackwater Canyon. Claire looked where he was pointing and felt her stomach tighten. The canyon was a massive gash in the earth, its walls sheer and dark. Even from miles away she could see how narrow the entrance was, how easily it could be defended, or become a trap. "We'll make camp here tonight," Hayes said. "Get some rest. Tomorrow we scout the canyon, figure out where Bennett is and who he's meeting. Then we decide how to proceed." They made a cold camp in a hollow between 2 ridges, not daring to light a fire that might give away their position. Claire wrapped herself in her blanket and tried to sleep, but her mind was racing. Tomorrow she'd be close to the man who'd murdered her father. Tomorrow she might finally get justice. Or tomorrow she might die trying. Hayes sat watch, his rifle across his knees, his eyes on the darkness. Claire watched him through half-closed eyes, studying his profile against the stars. He was a hard man, shaped by violence and loss, but there was something solid about him, something trustworthy. "Hayes," she said quietly. "Yeah?" "For helping me. You didn't have to." "Yes, I did." He didn't look at her. "Sometimes we help people not because we have to, but because it's the only way to stay human in a world that wants to make us monsters." Claire didn't know what to say to that, so she said nothing. Eventually exhaustion claimed her and she slept, her hand resting on her revolver, her father's locket cold against her skin. She woke before dawn to find Hayes already up and saddling the horses. Her body was stiff and sore, but she pushed through it, rolling up her blanket and preparing for the day ahead. "We'll leave the horses here," Hayes said. "Go in on foot. Quieter that way, and we can move through terrain horses can't handle. He handed her a canteen and some jerky. Eat fast. We need to be in position before full light. They hiked toward the canyon rim, moving carefully through the rocks and brush. The sky was just starting to lighten, stars fading as the sun prepared to rise. Claire's heart pounded with anticipation and fear. Every step brought her closer to Cole Bennett. Every step brought her closer to answers she'd been seeking for 3 long months. The canyon rim was a jagged line against the brightening sky. Hayes dropped to his belly and crawled the last 20 yards, Claire right behind him. They reached the edge and looked down into the canyon below. What they saw made Claire's blood run cold. The canyon floor was maybe 200 feet below them, and it was filled with men. At least 30 of them, maybe more, camped around several fires. Horses were picketed on one side, supplies stacked on the other. It looked like a small army. That's not just a meeting, Claire whispered. That's an operation. Hayes pulled out a small spyglass and scanned the camp below. His jaw tightened. I see Wade Dunmore down there. And his brothers. The whole Dunmore crew. Why would Bennett be meeting with them? I don't know, but it can't be good. Hayes shifted the spyglass, searching. Then he stopped. There! North end of the camp, the man in the black coat. Claire squinted but couldn't make out details at this distance. Is that him? Is that Bennett? That's him. Hayes collapsed the spyglass and rolled onto his back, staring up at the sky. This just got a lot more complicated. We can't take on 30 men. No, we can't. Hayes was quiet for a moment, thinking. But we don't have to. We just need to get Bennett away from the group. Isolate him. How? Hayes smiled, and it wasn't a pleasant expression. We give him something he wants more than whatever deal he's making with the Dunmores. We give him us. Claire stared at him. That's suicide. Not if we do it right. Hayes rolled back onto his stomach and looked down into the canyon again. Bennett's smart. He'll have guards posted, sentries watching the approaches. But he won't expect someone to walk right into his camp and announce themselves. The audacity of it will buy us time, maybe throw him off balance. And then what? He shoots us both and leaves our bodies for the vultures? Maybe. Or maybe his ego gets the better of him. Men like Bennett, they like to talk. They like to explain how clever they are, how they've outsmarted everyone. If we can get him talking, get him away from his men, we might get our chance. Claire wanted to argue, but she couldn't think of a better plan. What about the Dunmores? They know you. They'll try to kill you on sight. That's where you come in. You ride down there alone. Tell them you're looking for Bennett, that you've got information he needs. Information about federal marshals tracking him. That'll get his attention. Once you're talking to him, I'll move into position. When the moment's right, we take him. You want me to walk into a camp full of killers by myself? I'll be covering you the whole time. If things go bad, I'll start shooting. Create confusion. You run for the horses and we get out of there. Hayes met her eyes. But it's risky, more than risky. If you don't want to do this, we can wait. Watch the camp. Maybe find another opportunity. Claire thought about her father, about the 3 months she'd spent tracking his killer across 2 territories. She thought about the promise she'd made to his grave in Tucson. I'll do it. Hayes nodded slowly. You're braver than most men I know. I'm more scared than I've ever been in my life. Good. Fear keeps you sharp. Fear keeps you alive. He pointed to a narrow trail leading down into the canyon. That's your way in? It'll take about 30 minutes to reach the bottom. I'll be up here with my rifle. If I see you signal, I'll know something's wrong. The signal is you take off your hat and run your hand through your hair. Can you remember that? Take off hat, run hand through hair. Got it. One more thing. Hayes pulled a folded piece of paper from his pocket. Give Bennett this. Tell him it's a message from someone in Red Creek. It'll buy you credibility and get him curious enough to talk. Claire took the paper but didn't unfold it.
What does it say?
It says that Claire Murphy knows where his money from the Tucson bank robbery is hidden, that you're willing to trade the information for your life. It's a lie, of course, but Bennett doesn't know that. He's been looking for that money for 3 months. The gang he robbed the bank with double-crossed him, took the money, and ran. He's been hunting them ever since. How do you know all this? I told you. I've been tracking Bennett for 2 years. You learn a lot about a man when you follow his trail that long. Hayes checked his rifle, making sure it was loaded and ready. Are you sure about this, Claire? There's no shame in backing out. I'm sure. She wasn't, not really, but she couldn't let fear stop her now. Not when she was this close. She made her way back to where they'd left the horses and mounted the bay mare. Her hands were shaking as she guided the horse toward the trail down into the canyon. The sun was fully up now, the day already growing hot. Sweat trickled down her back, though whether from heat or fear she couldn't say. The trail was steep and treacherous, loose rocks sliding under the mare's hooves. Claire kept her attention split between the path and the camp below. She could see men moving around the fires, cooking breakfast. The smell of coffee and bacon drifted up to her, making her stomach growl despite her nerves. Halfway down, a shout went up. Someone had spotted her. Men scrambled for weapons, pointing up at her. Claire kept riding, slow and steady, her hands visible and away from her gun. Showing fear now would get her killed faster than anything. She reached the canyon floor and 3 men immediately surrounded her, rifles trained on her chest. One of them was Wade Dunmore. His face split into a nasty grin when he recognized her. Well, well. Look who decided to visit. Boys, this is the woman I told you about. The one who thinks she's tough enough to ride with men. Wade walked his horse closer. Where's your boyfriend, Hayes? I don't know, Claire lied. We split up after you chased us. I've been riding alone since yesterday. That so? Wade didn't believe her, that much was obvious. And you just happened to ride right into our camp? I'm looking for Cole Bennett. I was told he'd be here. I have information he needs. Claire pulled out the folded paper Hayes had given her. A message from Red Creek. Wade snatched the paper and read it. His eyebrows rose. This true? You know where his money is? That's between me and Bennett. Wade stared at her for a long moment, then gestured to one of his men. Take her to him, but keep your guns on her. She tries anything, shoot her. They escorted her through the camp. Men stopped what they were doing to watch her pass, their eyes cold and calculating. Claire felt like a rabbit surrounded by wolves. She kept her chin up, her expression neutral, even as her heart hammered in her chest. Bennett was standing near a fire at the far end of camp, talking with 2 hard-looking men in dusty trail clothes. He was shorter than Claire expected, maybe 5'8", with a narrow face and dark eyes that seemed to miss nothing. He wore a black coat despite the heat, and she could see the butts of 2 pistols beneath it. Mr. Bennett, Wade called out. This woman says she has information about your missing money. Bennett turned and looked at Claire. His expression didn't change, but something flickered in his eyes. Recognition, maybe, or curiosity. Do I know you? No, Claire said, but I know you. You killed my father in Tucson, Patrick Murphy. He was a federal marshal. The camp went silent. Every man there was watching now, waiting to see what would happen. Then its hand drifted toward one of his guns, then stopped. His lips curled into a smile that didn't reach his eyes. Murphy. Yes, I remember him. He got in my way. That's what happens to people who get in my way. Bennett walked closer, studying her face. You look like him. Got his eyes. You here for revenge? I'm here to make a deal. I'll tell you where your money is. You let me walk away alive. Bennett laughed, a sharp barking sound. And why would I believe you know where my money is? Because I've been tracking you since Tucson. I've talked to the same people you talked to, followed the same trails. I found the men who betrayed you. They're dead now, but before they died, they told me where they hid the money. Figured it might be useful information someday. Claire was making it up as she went, praying she sounded convincing. So here's my offer. I tell you where it is. You let me go. We both get what we want. Bennett circled her like a predator sizing up prey. You've got guts, I'll give you that. Most women would be crying by now, but you're standing here calm as Sunday, trying to bargain with the man who killed your daddy. That takes something special. It takes desperation, Claire said honestly. I've spent 3 months chasing ghosts. I'm tired, I'm broke, and I'm smart enough to know I can't beat you in a fair fight. So I'm offering you money instead of blood. Take it or don't. Your choice. Bennett stopped in front of her, so close she could smell the tobacco on his breath. You know what I think? I think you're lying. I think you came here to kill me, and this money story is just a way to get close. Am I wrong? Before Claire could answer, gunfire erupted from the canyon rim. Men shouted and dove for cover. Bullets kicked up dust around the camp, sending horses into a panic. Claire didn't hesitate. She pulled a revolver and aimed it at Bennett's chest. But Bennett was faster. He grabbed her wrist and twisted hard, making her drop the gun. He spun around and pressed his own pistol against her temple. I knew it, he hissed in her ear. You and whoever's shooting from up there. You thought you could trap me? More gunfire from the rim. One of the Dunmore men went down, clutching his leg. Another fell face first into the fire, dead before he hit the ground. Hayes was shooting fast and accurate, creating exactly the chaos he'd promised. Call him off. Bennett shouted over the noise. "Call him off or I'll paint this canyon with your brains." Claire drove her elbow back into Bennett's ribs as hard as she could. He grunted, and his grip loosened just enough for her to twist free. She dove for her fallen revolver, rolling and coming up with it aimed at Bennett's head, but he was already running, using the confusion as cover. He vaulted onto a horse and spurred it toward the canyon mouth, staying low in the saddle. Several of his men followed, while others returned fire at the rim where Hayes was positioned. Claire ran for the mare, but Wade Dunmore stepped into her path. "You're not going anywhere." She shot him in the shoulder. He spun and fell, cursing. She reached the mare and swung into the saddle, urging the horse into a gallop. Bullets whined past her head as she raced after Bennett. Behind her, the camp was pure chaos. Men shooting at shadows, horses breaking free of their picket line, fires kicked over and spreading. The canyon mouth was narrow, barely wide enough for two horses side by side. Bennett was already through it, disappearing around a bend. Claire followed, pushing her horse to its limit. She could hear other riders behind her. The Dunmores or Bennett's men, she didn't know which and didn't care. She rounded the bend and saw Bennett ahead, his horse laboring up a steep incline. She raised her revolver and fired. The bullet struck a rock near Bennett's head, spraying him with stone chips. He returned fire without looking back, 3 quick shots that went wide. Then Hayes was there, peering from behind a boulder on his roan gelding. He'd somehow gotten ahead of them, cutting off Bennett's escape. Bennett pulled his horse to a sliding stop, trapped between Claire behind and Hayes ahead. "End of the line, Bennett," Hayes called out. Bennett's hand moved toward his gun. Claire fired, hitting him in the right shoulder. He screamed, and his pistol fell from his hand. He clutched at the wound, blood seeping between his fingers. "Don't kill him yet," Hayes said, riding closer. "He's got questions to answer first." Behind them, hoofbeats thundered. The other riders were catching up. Claire wheeled her horse around and saw 5 men charging toward them. Wade Dunmore in the lead despite his wounded shoulder. His face was twisted with rage and pain. "We don't have time for questions," Claire said. Hayes glanced back at the approaching riders, then at Bennett slumped on his horse. "He made a decision. Into the rocks." Now, they spurred their horses off the trail and into a maze of boulders and narrow passages. Bennett's horse followed, driven by instinct and momentum. The terrain was treacherous, full of hidden drops and dead ends, but it would slow down their pursuers. Hayes seemed to know where he was going, leading them deeper into the rocky labyrinth. They reached a small clearing surrounded by high stone walls. There was only one way in or out, but it was defensible. Hayes dismounted and dragged Bennett from his horse. The outlaw hit the ground hard, groaning. Claire kept her gun trained on him while Hayes checked his wound. "He'll live," Hayes said. The bullet went through clean. "He's lost blood, but he's not dying yet. I want him conscious for this." The sound of approaching horses echoed off the stone walls. Hayes grabbed his rifle and took position at the entrance to the clearing. "They'll have to come through single file. I can hold them for a while, but not forever. Whatever you need to say to him, say it fast." Claire dismounted and stood over Bennett. He looked up at her through pain-glazed eyes, his face pale beneath the dirt and sweat. For 3 months she'd imagined this moment. She'd pictured herself pulling the trigger, watching him die, feeling vindicated. But now that she was here, all she felt was empty. "You killed my father," she said. "Shot him in the back during a bank robbery. He was a good man. He had a family. He had people who loved him, and you took him away like he was nothing." Bennett coughed, blood flecking his lips. He was a lawman. He knew the risks. "He was my father." Claire's voice shook.
"Do you have any idea what you took from me?"
"From my mother? From everyone who knew him?" "I've killed a lot of people, girl. Your daddy wasn't special. He was just in the wrong place at the wrong time." Bennett's eyes hardened despite his pain. "You want me to apologize? Beg for my life?" "I won't. I've done what I've done, and I'd do it again. That's who I am." Gunfire erupted from the entrance. Hayes was shooting, controlled bursts that echoed like thunder in the confined space. Men shouted and cursed. A body fell at the entrance, blocking the narrow passage. "Claire?" Hayes called without taking his eyes off the approach. "Decision time. We've got maybe 2 minutes before they figure out how to flank us." Claire raised her revolver and pointed it at Bennett's head. Her hand was steady. She'd thought about this moment every day for 3 months. She'd dreamed about it at night. She'd imagined the satisfaction she'd feel when she finally pulled the trigger. But standing there, looking down at this broken, bleeding man, she felt no satisfaction, just sorrow. Her father was still dead. Killing Bennett wouldn't change that. It wouldn't bring him back. It wouldn't heal the hole in her heart. My father believed in justice, Claire said quietly. Real justice. The kind that comes from courts and judges and juries, not from revenge in a canyon. If I kill you here, I'm no better than you. I'm just another killer with a gun and a grudge. Then you're a fool, Bennett spat. Maybe. Claire lowered her gun. Hayes, we're taking him alive. What? Hayes fired twice more, then glanced back at her. Claire, that's not practical. The Dunmores won't let us walk out of here with him. They need him dead so we can't talk about whatever deal they were making. Then we'll have to convince them otherwise. Claire hauled Bennett to his feet, pressing her gun against his spine. Mr. Dunmore, she shouted toward the entrance. Can you hear me? The shooting stopped. After a moment, Wade's voice echoed back. I hear you. I've got Bennett. He's alive but wounded. I'm a federal witness, and I'm taking him to stand trial for the murder of Marshal Patrick Murphy. Anyone who tries to stop me is interfering with federal justice. That's a hanging offense. Silence. Then Wade laughed, a bitter sound. You think I care about federal law? My brothers and I own this territory. No law reaches out here but ours. Then let me offer you a different reason, Claire called back. Bennett's got information about your operation here? Whatever you were planning with him, it's over now. But if you let us go, we won't tell anyone what we saw. We won't testify about the Dunmore crew being in Blackwater Canyon. You'll be free to continue your business without federal marshals breathing down your neck. More silence. Claire could almost hear Wade thinking, weighing his options. Finally, he spoke again. How do I know you'll keep your word? Because I don't care about you or your brothers or your rustling operation or whatever other crimes you're committing. I only care about one thing, getting justice for my father. You let me take Bennett to face trial, and you'll never see me again. You have my word. Your word ain't worth much. It's worth more than Bennett's life. You kill us here, and every federal marshal in the territory will come looking for answers. They'll tear this place apart. They'll find evidence of whatever you're doing. They'll hunt you down. Is Bennett worth that much to you? Another long pause. Then Wade said, Walk out of there slow. Keep your hands where we can see them. Any tricks and we'll cut you down, federal witness or not. Hayes looked at Claire, his expression skeptical. You trust them? No, but it's the only chance we have. She prodded Bennett forward. Move. They walked toward the entrance, moving slowly. Bennett stumbled between them, his breath coming in ragged gasps. Claire's heart pounded so hard she thought it might burst from her chest. This was the moment. Either Wade would honor the deal, or they'd all die in a hail of bullets. They reached the entrance. 4 men stood outside, Wade in front. All of them had guns drawn and ready. For a heartbeat, nobody moved. Then Wade lowered his weapon and stepped aside. Get out of here, he said. And if I ever see either of you again, the deal's off. I'll kill you both and enjoy doing it. They didn't need to be told twice. Hayes helped Bennett onto his horse while Claire mounted the bay mare. They rode out slowly, feeling eyes on their backs every step of the way. It wasn't until they'd cleared the canyon and put a mile between them and the Dunmore crew that Claire finally allowed herself to breathe. They rode hard for Red Creek, stopping only to bind Bennett's wound and let the horses rest. Bennett drifted in and out of consciousness, his face gray with blood loss and pain. By the time they reached town 2 days later, he was barely able to sit upright in his saddle. The sheriff met them at the edge of town, drawn by the commotion. Claire explained who she was and what had happened, showing him the documents that proved her father's identity and Bennett's crimes. The sheriff took Bennett into custody, locking him in a cell while he sent telegrams to federal authorities in Santa Fe. Claire stood on the boardwalk outside the sheriff's office, watching the sun set over Red Creek. Her body ached. Her clothes were filthy. She smelled of horse sweat and gunpowder. But it was over. She'd done what she came here to do. Then it would stand trial. Justice, real justice, would be served. Hayes emerged from the sheriff's office and stood beside her. You did good, he said quietly. I couldn't have done this without you. Sure you could have. You're tougher than you know. Hayes pulled out a pouch of tobacco and began rolling a cigarette. What will you do now? Go home, I guess? My mother's in Tucson. She'll want to know it's over. Claire looked at him. What about you? Don't know. I spent 2 years chasing Bennett. Now that he's caught, I'm not sure what to do with myself. He lit the cigarette and took a long drag. Maybe I'll head north. Montana? Maybe. I hear there's good ranching country up there. They stood in comfortable silence for a while, watching the town settle into evening. People walked by, going about their business, unaware of what had happened in Blackwater Canyon. Life went on, as it always did, with or without them.
Hayes, Claire said finally, about what you said in the saloon?
About me being your future wife. He looked at her, one eyebrow raised. What about it? Was that really just for protection? Just part of the plan? Hayes was quiet for a long moment. Then he smiled, a real smile this time, warm and genuine. Maybe it started that way. But you know, riding with someone through danger, watching them face down their demons and come out the other side, that changes things. Makes you see people differently. So you're saying? I'm saying that if a certain brave, stubborn, incredibly skilled woman wanted to head north to Montana with a worn-out cowboy, I wouldn't object. And if, along the way, she decided she might want to make that saloon declaration a reality, well, I wouldn't object to that either. Claire felt something warm bloom in her chest, something she hadn't felt in 3 long months. Hope, maybe. Or the beginning of something new. Montana's a long way from Tucson. It is. My mother would want to meet you first. She's particular about who I associate with. I'd expect nothing less. Claire smiled. Then I suppose we'd better start riding. It's a long journey, and we've got a lot of talking to do along the way. They collected their horses from the livery and rode out of Red Creek together, heading south toward Tucson, under a sky full of stars. Behind them, Cole Bennett sat in a jail cell awaiting trial. Ahead of them lay miles of open country and the promise of something neither had expected to find. Justice had been served. But more than that, 2 broken people had found each other in the darkness and chosen to walk toward the light together. That, Claire thought as they rode through the cool desert night, was worth more than any revenge could ever be.